Boundaries. If you go to a therapist or maybe a marriage counselor, the first thing they're going to talk about is you need to have boundaries with your partner, with your relationship. And the thing is most guys don't even know what boundaries are, and they'll come to me and they'll say, we have no boundaries. Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you what boundaries are, which ones you should probably have, and then we'll go from there. Now, boundaries aren't a preference. Like, preferences are something different, right? A preference is, hey, I don't like it when you leave dishes in the sink. That's a preference. I don't like it, but you know what? It's not the end of the world. A boundary would be more like, if you guilt or you shame me, we can't have a relationship. In other words, a boundary is a hard line. It's just like whenever you're disciplining your kids, parents will always say, hey, I don't want to yell at my kids anymore. It's like, well, you're having to yell because you don't have any consequence for the limit that you put on their behavior. In other words, there's no boundary. When the kids you tell them to go, brush their teeth, and they keep hemming and hawing and delaying and delaying and delaying and getting distracted, you say, hey, you go brush your teeth now, or we're going to take 5 minutes off your screen time tomorrow. Now there's a consequence, right? And they're like, oh, I better go do it. And then they run upstairs and they go and they brush their teeth. It's the same thing in your relationship. If you don't have some sort of consequence to your boundary, in other words, if your boundaries don't have any kind of teeth, then it means nothing. You can do or say anything you want, and she's just going to just say, okay, well, great, so what? What are you going to do about it? And when you don't do anything about it, then she sees you as weak. And when your wife starts to see you as weak, that becomes the end of your relationship. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen with just one thing. But if you get into this situation where you're repeatedly and consistently showing up as, I have no teeth or backbone in this relationship, she's going to start seeing you as weak. And part of her attraction mechanisms towards you is seeing you as a strong and capable man who is also able to demonstrate courage. If you're afraid of her and you can't stand up for yourself, then she's going to look at you and say, can you even stand up to the world? And your relationship is a microcosm of how she sees you operating in the bigger picture of the world. And so when you come home, like say you have employees and you tell them, hey, this is how you have to work, and if you can't, you're going to get fired. But you come home and you say, well, I'm married to you, I can't fire you, and so my consequences are nothing. Then she sees that, well, she can get away with anything. And not everybody acts this way. Not every woman acts such manner where they try to take advantage of you. But in the rare instance that you're with a woman who is this way, it's a slippery slope, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And so what ends up happening is she doesn't want to have sex with you anymore because you can't stand up for yourself. And you'll start to feel emasculated as well. You'll start to feel constricted, like you can't have anywhere to go. You have no freedom to do what you want. How you want to spend your time is never up to you anymore. And so I can't tell you the number of guys come through the program where he says, hey, let's start having some boundaries, and he starts setting them. All of a sudden, she's more attracted to him. And so what is it? What's the consequence that I tell guys to do most of the time when it comes to the boundaries? The first one is his time and attention. He doesn't have to pay attention to her. He doesn't have to do things for her. He doesn't have to be present. He can say, look, if you're going to guilt and shame me in such a manner, I don't have to be here with you. I don't have to talk to you. We don't even have to have a discussion. And when he first asserts himself in this way, his time and attention being the gift that he's giving her or taking it away, then the first thing that happens, she's like, oh, wait, what's going on? He starts to freeze her out a little bit and say, hey, I'm not going to have this conversation with you. I'm not going to be guilted and shamed. Oftentimes, if the guy hasn't said anything, then he just goes ahead and just tells her this. She'll make a change. But if she's a hard-headed type of a person and says, hey, she's more interested in power and control, and he says, I don't like this, then what she'll do is she'll get angry and escalate. And then we get into the whole manipulation game. And if she can manipulate you, she's going to see you as weak. So the first step in creating your own boundaries in your life is get clear on what you want. If you know what you want, then you can contrast it against what's happening, and then you can say, hey, I'm not going to have this. This isn't what we're going to do. And they have to have teeth. In other words, you have to be able to be willing to walk away. If you don't know what you want in your relationship, then how are you going to tell her you don't like that behavior? You don't know what you want. In other words, let's say, I want to have peace and harmony in my home. You have to make that declaration, like there'll be no yelling in my house. So that when she starts yelling, you now know that it contrasts against what you want. And now you can start boundaries, like, hey, we're not going to do yelling here in this house. We need to treat each other with respect and a good tone of voice. There's no reason to start yelling and belittling and shaming and guilting whenever you're not getting your way. There are better ways to handle that as adults. Right? And then when she doesn't listen to that, you just eject. You don't have to be a part of it. You don't have to be a part of that conversation. Most guys won't eject. They'll keep trying to justify themselves, keep trying to explain why he has the boundary instead of just enforcing it. You don't have to explain your boundary. In fact, if you're dealing with a skilled manipulator, the more you try to justify your boundary, the more ammunition you give her to shoot holes in your argument. And she's going to be better at this than you are. So you don't have to justify yourself. If you don't like that in your life, just state it as fact and say, no, we're not going to have a conversation. You're going to treat me like this. I don't want that. I don't want that kind of manipulation in my life. You're guilting me right now. We're not going to have that. You can't, if you want to ask me for something, that's fine, but you're not going to throw out a guilt trip and hope that I can guess what it is you're trying to get at. Most guys, when they go into a situation with guilt tripping, instead of like confronting her with it, what it'll do is it'll be passive aggressive. She'll just say, hey, why don't you do the trash? Or why don't you do something? I'm the only one who ever does anything around here. And then what he does is he does less work. Instead of actually confronting it and talking to her, he just does less work, which is passive aggressive, right? I'm going to get at her in a way that bothers her in a way that I don't actually have to confront her. Hopefully she'll get the idea. If she keeps bothering me, I'll do less. But the problem is that's a weak approach, and it usually just makes her more frustrated, and she nags you more and belittles you more and guilts you more, and you don't get what you want. So you have to be willing to collide with her. And this is usually where guys fail, because they know that, or they're afraid of their wife's going to leave them if they have collisions with her. And this is why he doesn't do it. He's so afraid that she'll leave him that he'll never say no, because he says if he tells her no, then they'll have a fight and she'll leave him, he'll be all alone and he'll be a failure and he'll be rejected and she's the best one he's ever had, and all these stories start running in his mind. But if you're willing to walk away, and you are willing to walk away in the beginning of the relationship, before you're married, before you have kids, then you have a lot more agency to say, hey, I'm actually going to walk away. I'm not going to put up with this. And then you'll be surprised at how much she'll turn things around. Most women want to know like what they can get away with, if they're this kind of person who is into power and control. And even if they don't, they still want to know their limits with you. They still want to know, like, if they push too hard, that you're probably going to leave, that you don't have to put up with this, and that you actually don't need to, and that you're worth more, and you're more valuable than that. And that's the problem, is most guys don't see themselves as valuable in a relationship, and they're always just chasing their woman to try to make sure she doesn't leave him, so she gets to do whatever she wants. There are no boundaries. There are no consequences. It's happy wife, happy life, at the expense of his sanity. So if you want to get clear on your boundaries, get clear on what you want. Then when you get clear on what you want, have some sort of enforcement mechanism on the other end of that. Say, I don't have to spend time or attention with you. I don't have to engage. Or it could be something else. If it's really bad, like say your wife's cheating on you, you say, I'm leaving. I'm not going to be with a woman who does this. I'm just leaving. I'm out. I don't need this. Or if you're just in something that's minor, you just tell her. And usually if she cares about you, if she cares about your well-being and what bothers you, she'll just do it, because she, just like you would change just if she asked you. So anyways, brother, if you like this video, go ahead, hit the like button, maybe subscribe. If you want to see more of this, you want to get notified, and I'll see you in the next one.